From bit we will be starting off from the very basic, and I hope all of you are doing well. So the SAT that we take now is what we refer to as a DSAT or digital SAT. Previously, there used to be a paper version of the SAT. Now the SAT is what we refer to as a digital SAT or DSAT. The change was adapted in March 2023 internationally, and considering the change was adapted in Pakistan in March 2023. In US, the change was adapted in March 2024. Just because of the fact that test is not digital, there are a lot many people who have confusion regarding the test, and people assume that you can pretty much take the test anywhere. So considering the test is digital, but please notice that you're still required to go to a testing center and take the SAT. You can't really take the SAT at your home. So you are pretty much you're still supposed to, get registered with the college board and decide on a date, decide on a venue where you have to take the SAT. And then, of course, you'll have to go there and you're supposed to carry your laptop or your tablet with yourself in order to take the SAT. So what we do recommend all of our students is that they carry a laptop and not carry a tablet, considering you're also used to using our laptops. So what we do recommend is that all of you carry your own laptop and charges with yourself on the day of the SAT. So please notice, like I mentioned, you still have to go to a testing center and you're supposed to carry your laptop, though you can carry your tablets as well. But since we're also used to using laptops more, so it's recommended that all of you carry your own laptops with yourself. You have an option to borrow a laptop from College Board, and for that you have to let them know 1 month in advance that you'll be borrowing a laptop there in your examination center. And that is something that you have to let the College Board know 1 month in advance before your SAT, but we do not really recommend this option. Once again, we're also used to using, our own laptops, and we're not very familiar, or we're not so used to using someone else's laptop. So it's recommended that you carry your own laptop with yourself. If I were to break down the SAT section-wise, so we've got two broad sections. We've got reading and writing. We've got maths. And I'll stop here for a while, and I would like every single of you to take this orientation class to the very last, because there are a lot many details that I'll be, discussing there in the middle of the session and then towards the end of the session. So please do not leave this session in the middle of the class. So we've got two broad sections, reading and writing. Then we've got maths as well. So reading and writing has two modules. We refer to the first module as module 1, and of course the second module is referred to as module 2. For maths, the first module is again referred to as our module 1, and then we have module 2 as well. And both of these maths module, we have the calculator enabled. So previously, they would allow us to use the calculator only in one module or in one section of the maths, and they would not allow us to use the calculator on the other section before the DSAT. Now you can pretty much use the calculator in both the sections of the SAT. Also, please notice that you're supposed to take the SAT on an app called Blue Book. You're supposed to have this app downloaded in your laptops or in your MacBooks. So we have this app available both on the Windows Store and the Mac OS Mac Store. So you have to have this application downloaded in your laptops. Ideally, 1 month before the test, because we'll be practicing a lot on this app as well. The test dates that we have for this year are these. The next SAT is now going to be on 7th of June, but of course, none of us are preparing for this, considering we're pretty late for this if you're taking this session. So we will primarily be targeting the August attempt, followed by the September, but then we have the SAT on 4th of October as well, then we have one on 8th of November, then we have one on 6th of December, and then followed by that, we have the SAT in March. We don't have the SAT in January or February. Then followed by the March attempt, we have the May attempt, and then the June attempt. So these are the 5 attempts that you can possibly consider for this year, particularly if you're in A2 already. But if I were to break down the paper or the SAT or the structure of the SAT section-wise, so here are some of the details. please notice the total time duration that we have for the SAT English portion is 64 minutes, and we're going to have a total of 54 questions. And if I were to break it down module wise, please notice we have a total of 32 minutes for the first module, and we've got 27 questions there in the first module. Likewise, in the second module, we've got 32 minutes as well, and we've got 27 questions there. If I were to talk about maths, please notice the total time duration that we have is 70 minutes, and the total number of questions in the maths portion combined in the two modules would be 44 questions. But if you were to break it down section-wise, so we've got 35 minutes for each of the module, and there are 22 questions in each of the module, making it a total of 44 questions. Please notice that 100% of the questions in English would be MCQs or multiple choice questions. Whereas in maths, only 75% of the question, or let us say 33 questions out of 44 are MCQs, whereas the remaining 11 questions are what we call student-produced responses, where you're supposed to manually put in your answer through your keyboard, which is why we recommend that you carry your laptop. For example, if your answer is 3/4, so you're supposed to put in 3/4 through a keyboard. If your answer is 25, you're supposed to put in 25 there in the box, in the answer box. If your answer is, for example, 300, you're supposed to put in 300 to the keyboard through your keyboard, and so on. I'll proceed with the scoring part here, and then I'll discuss the registration part and how exactly we have to register with the College Board. So please notice, beta, the SAT is graded on a scale of 400 to 1600. A lot many people have this misconception regarding the scoring, that the SAT is scored on a scale of 0 to 1600. It's not graded on a scale of 0 to 1600. Is graded on a scale of 400 to 1600. This basically means if you were to register for the SAT, but if you did not go there to take the SAT for some reason, if you did not show up there for some reason, let's say you get sick, God forbid, you will still be getting 400 points. So the minimum score you could expect to see there on the SAT would be 400. So even if you were to appear there, and if you were to not attempt anything, you would still be getting 400 points. The maximum score you could get to see there on the SAT would be 1600. And if I were to break it down section-wise, so the maximum score we could have there in reading and writing or English would be 800, and the maximum score we could see there in the maths would also be 800. And if I were to write the scale for it, so the minimum score for English is 200, the maximum score for English is 800. Likewise for maths, the minimum score is 200, and the maximum score is 800. So your English is graded on a scale of 200 to 800. The maths is graded on a scale of 200 to 800 as well. In case if you have to take any notes, I'll give a bit of pause here. You can take the notes if you have to, and then we'll proceed. The next important thing that all of us are supposed to remember here is that we're supposed to get registered with the College Board in order to take the SAT. So you need to go to this website, www.collegeboard.org, and you're supposed to register with the College Board in order to take the SAT. What you must remember is that you must have a valid passport in order to take the SAT if you're taking the SAT in Pakistan or Nepal or Bangladesh. Birth certificate, bay form, your driving license, your social security card are not acceptable in Pakistan, Nepal, or Bangladesh. So some of you may have been looking up the information on the internet, and some of you may have been looking up the information for the US candidates. So for them, they do accept social security, social driving license, or other form of identity. But for us here in Pakistan, in case if you're planning, if you plan on taking the SAT in Pakistan, and if you'll not be traveling before your SAT or during your SAT, so you must have a valid passport on the day of the SAT. You don't really need a passport there at the time of the registration with College Board, but you do need one there on the day of the SAT. If, for example, if you forget your passport at home for some reason, you'll simply not be let in there in the examination center. And by valid, I mean two things over here. A, your passport must not be expired. In case if it's expired, you can get it renewed. Now the passport issue here in Pakistan has been fixed, so you can get one, and you can you can get one made easily without any sort of delays. Also, Another information about the passport that's very pertinent, that's very relevant over here is that your name on your passport must exactly match the details on your college board. I'll give you a bit of an example over here. So if, for example, if your name is Mohammed Ahmed, Mohammed, Ahmed, and if you mistakenly spell it like this on your college board ID, so instead of O, if you put U there, so they're gonna assume that you're a different person and you're probably trying to trick them, or you're probably trying to cheat them for some reason. So you need to make sure that your details or your spelling or your name and everything exactly matches the way it is there on your passport. And in case if you do not have a passport, I'm sure you would have some other kind of identity card. Your parents would have it. So you need to make sure that you're making no spelling mistake. What people often do is that they have a different spelling on their passport, they have a different spelling on their OA levels or intermediate certification. So you need to make sure that your spelling there must exactly matches the spelling that you have on your passport. There must not be a single spelling mistake. And also, if your first name, for example, if your entire name is this, Muhammad Ahmed Bhatti, for example, it must exactly be put the same way there on your college board ID. So I would like to stop here, and this is something that I would like you guys to copy. This is something that I suggest that all of you better copy, please. Also, if I were to talk about few types of admission, particularly if you are just starting off your AS. And if you're, of course, if you're starting off your A2, if you're starting off your A2 or your second year of your intermediate, so then, of course, you got no choice left. You have to take the SAT this year. And the sooner you take, the better chances or more chances you are going to have, considering you would have, multiple attempts left and you could still, work towards a better score. And if you have just finished your O levels, or if you are about to finish your O levels, and if you're going to start AS from this year, this is again relevant for you as well. So we've got two kinds of admissions. One is what we call EAED. We call them early action and early decision. If I were to simplify it in layman terms, so please notice action is taken by you, decision is taken by the university, of course, and they're going to decide whether they're going to admit you or not admit you. So what happens in an early action or an early admission cycle is that it basically allows you to apply earlier than most of the candidates. I'll show you guys some of the statistics, and then I think this will make more sense in a bit. So what happens is in an early action is that you're basically supposed to submit everything. We use the term materials by November 2025 for this year. So you basically have to submit everything by November 2025, including your transcripts, your press statement, your SAT score, your letter of recommendations, whether you've done any kind of internships or not, your community services, your extracurricular activities, and whether you've done any sort of capstone project, whether you've done any sort of participations or not. Everything has to be submitted to the university by November 2025. And you'll get to hear from the university by mid of December 2025, and they will let you know whether they're admitting you or not admitting you. What happens in a regular admission cycle is that you have more time, and you can pretty much submit everything by mid of January or late of January, and you can get to hear from the universities by March till mid of May. And I'm sure you may have followed up for this year that for most of the universities, even the waitlisted candidates have already heard from the universities whether they are being admitted or not admitted, or being not admitted. So I'll show you guys some of the statistics so that this could make more sense. If I were to particularly talk about the Ivy League school before I talk about some of the other schools and then some of the Pakistani universities, I would like to show you guys these numbers over here. So if you could see, look at these applications and look at these applications. So both of them, this is the early admissions or early admission cycle applications which were received. These are the regular admission cycle applications which were received. And if you were to look at the percentage of the acceptance, so you can see that for each of these 8 schools, the percentage of acceptance in the early admission cycle is almost 3 to 4 times than that of the regular admission cycle. And which is why you will see any sane person telling you that you go for the early admission cycle if the university offers the early admission cycle. Not all of the universities offer early admission cycle. For example, none of the universities in Pakistan offer early admission cycle, but a lot many universities in US they do offer early admission cycle. And if I were to show you guys a more comprehensive statistic for another year, so you can pretty much compare this number to this number. And you can see that the percentage of acceptance here is 14.60, where it's only 3.60. That's for Brown, just by the way. If you were to look at for Howard, for example, it's 7.87 over here, it's 2.34 over here. So the percentage of being accepted, or the chances of being accepted there, and the early admission cycles have historically been 3 to 4 times of the regular admission cycle. So what you have to do for the early admission cycle is that you have to pretty much, wind up everything, particularly if you're in your A2 by November 2025, and then you have to basically submit everything if you're, or if you're in your second year of intermediate. So you have to submit everything by November 2025 to the university. And for the regular admission cycle, you do have more time, but it's just that it decreases your chances significantly. But this competitiveness is only relevant if you're basically applying to one of the top 50 schools, I would say. Then only this discussion that we're having right now is relevant. Some of the other terms which were pretty common. Uzair, beta, you could let me know what exactly is not clear, and in case beta it's not clear, so you can be specific about it. How beta, what is it clear? What is discussed? Ariba, Iman beta, is this clear? Fatma, Heather, Hassan, Anjum beta, is this clear? Guys, if it's clear, you can let me know there on the Zoom chat. Hurera beta, is this clear? Huzama, is this clear? Malika beta, is this clear? Pish, Raja, Arfin beta, is this clear? Rabah beta, is this clear? Sidra, is this clear to you? Yes, do let me know in case if anything is not clear, or in case if you're not able to understand anything. I will be taking Q&As towards the end, but in case if none of this is making sense, you can let me know. But I don't think that this is something that would not be clear. I'm pretty used to doing this. I've been doing this with the other batches for this year as well, so I don't think I've discussed anything that should have been difficult for you guys. But in case if anything is not clear, please be vocal about it. So there's some terms which were pretty relevant during the COVID time. One term is what we call test optional. So since you guys are beginning to apply to universities, so you may come across this term on some of the websites, which is test optional. So some of the universities went test optional during the COVID times, and they basically, this test option essentially means that you have a choice to take the ACT, or you cannot take the ACT. It's up to you. But if you do not take the ACT, so that basically means that you're increasing the burden on the rest of your profile. That is your grades, your ECAs, your activities, and everything else, excluding the ACT. Test blind means that they won't even look at your SAT score. Even if you were to submit it, they will not be looking or paying any attention to your SAT score. So that's what we mean by test blind. Test flexible, on the other hand, means that you have a choice to either take ACT or SAT or AP. There's some universities that want you to take both SAT and AP. A lot many universities. There's some universities that would want you to submit ACT/ACT or AP score. So that would vary from university to university and then program to program. So that's something, some research that you have to do. Now, coming back to this point, please. A lot many universities that went as optional, for example, Harvard, Dartmouth, and some of the other universities which went as optional back in 2020, have made it clear for the class of 2029. In your case, if you're just starting off your A2, so you guys are going to be the class of 2030. And if you're just starting off your AS, you guys are going to be the class of 2031. So for the class of 2029, a lot many universities have made it very clear that they will be needing the SAT scores from the students who plan on applying to these universities in 2025. In your case, you guys will be applying, the coming year, and you guys will eventually be the class of 2030. Your university will start in 2026. So for your colleges or for your universities, I'm sure more universities will follow the suit. Not all of the universities went test optional. There are very few universities that went test optional. But as COVID ended, which I'm sure you would know that has ended pretty much every year, there are cases here and there, but most of the universities are back with their test or the ST requirement. So in case if you come across this term anywhere, during your research, maybe you're watching an old YouTube video, or maybe you're reading some old information on the internet. So please be careful about this term and make sure that you're reading the latest information that is relevant for you, since you guys will be applying in this cycle, 2025-2026 cycle, and you guys will be a class of 2030. So make sure you're reading the information for class of 2030. That too, if you're just starting off your A2 or second year of your intermediate. And if you're just starting off your AS, you guys will be the class of 2031. So make sure that you're reading the relevant information for yourself. So what I'd like to talk about that how exactly we go about the preparation over here, because this was just the general overview of the test. So what we do over here is that tomorrow or maybe day after tomorrow, we'll be taking a diagnostic test. And a diagnostic test is pretty much like a full-length SAT test. And once we have taken it, we would receive your baseline score. We would know where exactly you stand. So there are students who come to us and they tell us that I want to apply to an Ivy League school, and their baseline scores are 800. So what we tell them is that since you're standing at 800, and if you're looking at 1550, this improvement of 750 points is not possible in a 3-month period. So for this, we need at least 6 to 8 months. Now, our answer to somebody who's already standing at 1200 and he needs a 1550 would of course be different than our answer to somebody who's standing at 800. Likewise, there are going to be students in your batch as well who would have a baseline score of 1400 already, and they would only need 1450. So for them, we would have a different advice. And there would be students in your batch who would have a baseline score of 1400 and they need 1550, and for them, we would have a different plan. So once we receive your baseline score, we have a one-on-one session with you. And by one-on-one session, I'm sure as the name suggests, that only you or your parents can attend this session. So if your parents want to attend this session, a lot many parents do, but most of the parents sit it out. They do not really attend this session. So in case if they want to, they can attend this session. They can be a part of this session. And in this session, what we discuss is that we decide on some of the universities. We ask you, what your safety schools are, what are some of the schools that you're considering, and what exactly your academic goals are, and when exactly you plan on taking the ACT. We discuss all of that over here. There's a lot of discussion that basically takes place in this session. And once we decide on a targeted score in some of the universities, of course, we start off with the preparation. Now, when it comes to the preparation, so this some preparation that all of you will be doing. I'll talk about the preparation in some of the next slides as well. Uh, Followed by the preparation, we have the full length test. We'll keep evaluating you. We'll keep checking that how far you have come, and then we'll let you know whether you're ready to take the ACT or you're not ready to take the ACT. So all of this will of course take place once you have your baseline score and once we decide on targeted score. So there are two parts to the preparation that I'll talk about in a bit as well. So one is the general preparation that all of you will be doing with the class, and then since we issue customized homework in addition to the class homework as well, we'll talk about that towards the later part of the session. So this will make more sense at how exactly we go about the preparation, because that's a pretty lengthy discussion. Some of the score requirements that I would like to talk about, considering some of us do not have any counselor there in the colleges. Some of us have the counselors who do not have updated knowledge regarding the university. Some of the counselors are pretty good. So I would like to share my 2 cents here as well. So please notice, in case if you plan on applying to one of the Ivy League school, there have been students who have got into Ivy League school with a score of 1450, depending on the program that they're applying to. It isn't like that you can get into all of the Ivy Leagues with a score of 1450. It isn't like you can get into all of the programs with a score of 1450, but there have been students who keep getting acceptance on a score of 1450. But if you're applying there with a score of 1450, you need to make sure that you have a very good profile. Now, what exactly do we mean by profile? Once again, it basically means your grades, your achievements, your extracurricular activities, your college essays, your letter of recommendations, your ECAs, your capstone project, your internships, also the relevant internships, not just any internship. So if you want to pursue engineering, so make sure that you've done relevant internship. If you want to go to a med school, so make sure that you've actually interned there in some kind of a hospital. And the more internships you have, the stronger chances you will have. So all of that really matters. So please notice, there was a time when I was taking the ACT, way back 16 years ago, actually 18 years ago. So MIT mentioned this very clearly there on website, that we do not admit scores, we admit people. So there's a very wrong misconception there in the minds of the students that SAT score is going to be some kind of savior or a magic band. Like if we get 1600 on the SAT, it will automatically take care of everything else that we lack. So please notice, in addition to a very good score, you need a very good profile as well if you want to get into one of the Ivy League universities. What most people assume somehow is that you can have a very good score, and that is somehow going to make up for our weak profile. So in addition to the ACT score, you need a very good profile as well. Please notice that your very good score, once again, cannot ever make up for your weak profile. Though you can have a very good profile, and SCT score like in the range of 1450 and the 1500 will do it for one of the Ivy League universities, provided that you have a very good profile. But the vice versa is not possible. So just be very careful about it. Also, please notice, a lot many people do assume that regardless of academic grades that we have, if we get a 1600 over here, regardless of the grades that we have, so the universities, they're going to break our email by sending us the scholarship letters and so on. It does not at all work that way. There are literally thousands of people around the world who are getting a perfect score on the ACT. So 1600 is not as impressive as it once used to be. There are a lot many people, there are a lot many resources, there are a lot many different kinds of resources. There are a lot many softwares that we'll talk about in next half an hour that even we make use of as well there here at Tutor Plus. So please notice, your perfect score is very important, or let's just say a very good score is very important. Anything 1500 plus is good. That's what we say here. In fact, anything if you're applying locally here in Pakistan, so 1400 plus is good. But please notice, please do not assume, please do not let anyone misguide you that a perfect 1600 will take care of your weak grades. Of course, they would look at this score, and it would make up somehow for that a B that you had there in O levels. It would make up for it, but please notice you can't apply with all the B's and C's, and then you can expect that this 1600 will take care of all of the B's that I have, and then all of the C's that I have. Also, please notice when I say a complete profile. So if you have a score of, I'll give you some example over here. So if you have a score of, hypothetically speaking, 1480, you've done 3 relevant internships, you've got different kind of interests, you've done multiple projects as well, and your ECs are valid and are not only limited to the degree that you want to pursue. Now compare this to a person who's got a 1530, has done no internship, has limited ECAs, has a very weak college essays and letter of recommendation. So you would prefer this person over this person. Please notice that's how it works. If I would talk about some of the state universities, so you can pretty much start getting into state universities with a score of 1200, and then this requirement goes all the way to 1400 for some of the universities, which are very choosy, which are very difficult to get in. There are some of the state universities which are very difficult to get in. Also, some of the state universities have a different score requirement for in-state student and out-of-state students. There are very few universities like that, but there are universities like that. So if you're a Texas resident, so they would have a different score requirement for you. If you're, for example, you're applying to Texas Austin University, but if you're applying to there from Florida, so they would have a different requirement for you. But again, that is an example only. You do not have to take my words for granted. I'm not giving you the example for any of the universities from Texas. I'm only letting you know that there are some of the universities like that. So make sure that you're actually looking at the correct information. If I were to talk about LUMS, so there have been people who get acceptances from LUMS on a score of 1200, but please notice, like most of the universities in US, LUMS also looks at a very holistic picture. They look at your grades, particularly your O levels and matriculation grades, your college essays, your personal statement. So they look at all of that. Also, in the same breath, I would like you guys to know that there have been students who have not gotten an acceptance at a score of 1450 from LUMS. So eventually it boils down to, or it comes down to that how versatile your profile is, what your grades are, in addition to your SAT score. So please do not think that the SAT scores are the only thing that we need. We need to have a very good profile even for LUMS as well. Also, please remember LUMS as a university, it has different colleges within it. So you need a different school, you need a different score for their most sought after programs such as ACF or management sciences, or if you were to talk about computer sciences, so that's also one of the most competitive programs. So we need a different score for them. If you were to talk about one of the less popular programs such as political sciences or law, so we need a different score requirement for them. So the score requirement would also vary from program to program. So you may bump into people who have gotten to LUMS with a score of 1200, and that may have you thinking, okay, achha, mera bhi 1200 aa jayega, to mera bhi LUMS mein ho jayega. That really depends on the circumstances that you had. And also, you don't really have to match the ACT score. You have to match the grades and the entire circumstances and the application and the school, not the university. The school that they basically applied to, the program that they applied to. So there's a lot that really goes in here, beta. IBA, beta, they made a significant change there in their admission criteria. Previously, they would let people take the SAT. They would actually let people apply with a score of 1270 plus, and any student who had a score of 1270 would get a clear exemption from the test with a breakable score of 600 and 600. But gone are these days. This is not relevant anymore. Now, in order to apply to IBA, IBA basically offers two kinds of admission. One is the direct admission, where you don't have to take the interview, and you're just directly admitted. And there's another one that we call through interview. So any student who has a score of 1450, 1460, 1470, 1480 plus does not have to sit the interview. They're just admitted directly. Anyone who has a score of somewhere between 1400 and 1420, sorry, 1400 or 1450 has to sit the interview as well for IB. This requirement for the interview keeps on varying from program to programs and from attempts to attempts. So sometimes you will see them taking the interview at a score of 1400. At times, this requirement would change and it would become 1420. So this requirement for the interview keeps on changing from session to session and then from attempts to attempts. IBA has two attempts that we call round one and round two. So you need to look at 1450 at least, but on the safer side, I would like you guys to look at 1470 plus there for the direct admission if you plan on going to IBA directly without sitting for the interview. And if you want to go for the interview, you still need a 1400 plus for IBA now. Also, a lot many people have this confusion about the grades. So for LUMS, in case you plan on applying to LUMS, so you need at least a 2B1C in your A levels and 70% in your intermediate. If you plan on applying to IB, you need 2B1C in your A levels or 70%. This has again been changed to 65 or 65% in your intermediate program. For the BS programs, you need 1B2C and 60%. Now, this is relevant because a lot many people, some of you, God forbid, may be resetting the exam. And I hope that none of you may ever reset the exam. But in case, what usually happens is that a lot many people have this confusion and they assume that we need these grades or this percentage there to sit or to apply there in IBA. We don't really need this percentage there to apply to IBA. We only need this percentage or these grades once we have been admitted. So even your driver, who probably never studied after fifth grade, your parents have already been to different universities, even your younger siblings, you can all apply to IBA and LUMS as well. We only need these grades once we have been admitted. So once your A2 result is out in August, so after that, the universities will be asking you to submit your results. So at that time, you must have these results. You don't need these results at the time of the applying, at the time of starting your application or at the time of submitting your application. This is a very common misconception that students have, and they assume that we need these grades at the time of the application. So we do not need these grades at the time of the application. So even if you're taking all composite exams, for example, in LGS, we have the composite exams only. So you don't need these grades there at the time of the admission, beta. So you only need these grades once you have been admitted and the universities ask you for a result. Another very common point that I would like to talk about here is that please notice that DSAT that all of you are going to take is now adaptive, but it's only sectionally adaptive. And I would like you guys to listen to me very carefully over here, because this is something that a lot many teachers are not even very clear about. So I would talk about this for a good 5 minutes so that this point is clear to you guys. So the fact that the DSAT is now adaptive, and by adaptive, what we essentially mean is that they're closely looking at your performance of your module 1. And as we discussed there at the start of the session, that there are 2 modules. And if I were to give the example for the maths module, so there are 22 questions in each maths module. And let's say if you get 16 questions right out of 22 in your first module, these 22 questions will be there on the normal difficulty level. If you get 16 questions right, the algorithm, or let's say in case you don't know what algorithm is, so the software would think that you're basically a good student, and your next set of 22 questions will be harder, will be different. So please notice, you and your friend, though you're taking the SAT on the same place on the same day, you may not get to see the same type of questions. You may or you may not. And once again, your module 1 may exactly be similar, could not be similar, because there are different variants that you and your friends can get, even though you're taking the SAT on the same exam set in the same exam center. So if you get 16 out of 22 right, So that will basically make the software thing or the algorithm think that you're basically a good student, and your next set of 22 questions will be difficult. And let's just say if you once again get 16 questions right out of 22 there. So please notice these 22 questions were hard. So hypothetically speaking, you'll be getting 640 points out of 800. This number is again based on assumption only, and this number could again be 660, 670, could be different. It's only there for the sake of explanation. You don't have to take this number for granted. But this is how it works. Now, if you were to compare this to this person, let's just say another person who's taking the SAT with you in the same examination center, let's say this person gets 14 questions right out of 22. Now, that's going to make the software think that this person is probably not good at mathematics. And his next set of 22 questions in module 2 will be easier than yours. Yours were harder, his would be easier. And let's just say if this person gets 16 questions right as well, which is same as you just by the way, if you could see, his score will only be there in the range of 580 to 590. So the point I'm making here is that the college board will be compensating you guys for the difficulty level of the exam. So if you get a difficult module, they will be lenient there in your grading. And if you get an easier module, module 2 just by the way, so they'll be pretty strict with their grading. That's how adaptiveness works on the SSD. So what we have to do ideally is that we have to get as many questions right there in our module 1. And usually most people that I teach have had no issues usually, and they're getting 20 questions, 21 questions right on their module 1, and they get a difficult module 2. You may have come across some of the stuff on the internet as well. You may have some other memes on the internet as well regarding these modules 1 and module 2. So if you get a harder module 2, that's a good thing, because now they're not going to be as strict while grading you. So even if you make a few mistakes over here, let's just say if you get 18 questions right, you would still be scoring 700 points there on the SAT math section. And that's exactly how it works for the English section as well. So the point I'm making here is that the algorithm will decide the difficulty level of your next module, but please notice your performance eventually will decide it for you. So if you do well on your first module, your second module will be difficult. And you need to pray that you get a harder module. Because if you get an easier module, and God forbid if you make some mistakes over here, they will be deducting 20 to 30 points even for one singular mistake. That's point number 1. Another thing, or another point that I would like you guys to know over here is, as we're all nearing 800, which is a perfect score on each of the section, so it gets difficult to score. For example, even if you were to make one mistake, for example, if you get 43 out of 44 right in mathematics, so you will see them deducting 30 points for this one mistake, because they make it difficult to get a perfect 800. If you make 2 mistakes, this time around, they will not deduct 30 marks. This time around, they will only deduct 20 marks. So your score will be 750. And once again, if you make another mistake, let's just say, so this time around, once again, they'll deduct 20 marks and you'll get a 730. And if you make another mistake, once again, so you'll get a 710 and so on. But they make it difficult to get a perfect 800. So you have to be literally spot on there. And you have to get literally everything right to get a perfect 800. So even if you were to make one mistake, they will deduct as many as 30 marks in either of the 2 sections. And of course, when I say either of the 2 sections, if you're making the mistake in the math section, it's not going to like that they're going to deduct the marks for the English section, but this goes for both the sections. So even if you were to make one mistake, they would deduct as many as 30 marks for that one single mistake. And they do not really care if that's a very common mistake or a very silly mistake or a conceptual mistake. For them, a mistake is a mistake. So need to be, again, very wary and aware of this point as well. So guys, are these 2 points clear to you guys? This is the first time that I'm asking you guys whether you're understanding anything or not, because this is particularly very important for any of you who plans on taking the SAT this year, or maybe, ever there in your career, in your academic career. Wahab beta, is this point clear to you? Ariba, is this clear? Uzair, Iman, Heather beta, is this clear? Hassan beta, is this clear? Hurera, Hosama beta, is this point clear? Itiza, Maliha beta, is this clear? Piyush, is this clear to you? Arfin, Rava beta, is this clear? Sidra, Siraj beta, is this clear? Suha beta, is this clear? Yusra, is this clear? So you need to understand that adaptiveness does play a very key role when it comes to the SAT. I am usually getting this one question there in the Q&A sessions, which is why I would like to get this one out of the way. So just in case if anyone has a question later on, you can listen to this point, and then in case if you have more questions regarding the scholarship, you can pretty much ask me. So I'll go from local to abroad. I'll go in the opposite order this time around. So for IBA, please notice what IBA and LUMS do is that they would simply tell you to get admitted first, and then only will they be entertaining any sort of your financial aid questions. Both IB and LUMS offer very generous scholarships in both of the universities. If you plan on applying to either IB, LUMS, or maybe both, a lot many students have been studying and have graduated on scholarships, and you don't really have to pay it back. It's not a loan; it's a scholarship or it's a financial assistance. So what they offer you is that sorry, they reduce your fee based on your circumstances, either by maybe 50%, maybe 70%, maybe 80%, maybe sometimes if you're very lucky, then by 100%. But you have to first get yourself admitted, and they're not going to base your admission on your financial ability or your financial condition. So they won't even know how rich or not so rich you are. So they will not look at that. They would first want you to be admitted. And once you have been admitted, and in case if you need any sort of financial assistance, so both of these universities, they have a proper financial assistance department. They have a proper financial assistance deadline. You have to fill a separate form for it, and then they may ask you for certain documents. They could ask you for your father's salary if he works somewhere. If he has a business, they could ask for his tax returns. They could ask for some of the utility bills as well. They could ask where exactly you live. They may ask you some of the other personal questions, as in how many dependents there are in your family and so on. But they would only entertain such queries once you have been admitted. Now, once if you're applying to the US, the case is slightly different. So some of the universities in US, you have to let them know at the time of the application whether you will be needing any sort of scholarships or not. Considering in case if you plan on applying to one of the most competitive schools, such as one of the Ivy League schools, so please notice they have a very vast application pool. So if you let them know in advance that you'll be needing a scholarship, you're basically decreasing your chances because the competition is pretty stiff. There are some of the universities which will not be asking you upfront whether you'll be needing a scholarship. But once you have been admitted, once they send you an admission letter or admission package, and if you're maintaining any sort of correspondence over the email, and if you let them know that I'll be needing some kind of scholarship, so then they do offer you the scholarships after your admission. So for the competitive schools in US, we have a different criteria for schools which are not as competitive but are still good or excellent. I would say the criteria changes. So this would vary from university to university. So you need, what we ideally advise is that in case you plan on applying to US, what I would advise over the years is that you must apply to at least 10 different US universities, 4 of the universities or 3 of the universities that you think that you may not be able to get in because of your academic performance and your overall profile. 3 to 4 schools which are exactly a perfect match for you, and the past admits who have been admitted exactly had a similar profile as yourself, and then have 3 to 4 safety schools for which, as in we safe by safety schools, what we essentially mean as the schools that you can easily get in case you plan on taking the SAT for one of the US universities. In Canada, beta, we don't really need the SAT. Not you would not find even 5% of the universities asking you for the SAT. Same goes for the Australian universities. You can submit your SAT scores, particularly if you're considering Canadian and Australian scores, and they may look at the ACT scores, but there's no requirement. Yes, this could be a plus considering, if you have a pretty decent score, so they would know that you're a pretty good candidate. So they may consider that as well. But again, that's not a requirement. In Turkey, we do have a lot many universities such as Sabancı, Bilken, Me Too that offer pretty generous scholarships on the basis of the ACT score. So for Turkey, in case if you plan on considering one of the Turkish universities, so you can consider that as well. We'll come to this part towards the end. In case if you plan on applying to some of the other universities, so we have one of the universities, for example, CBM or IOBM does offer, Zabas does offer, Habib, NUS Business School does offer, FAST has campuses in Lahore, Islamabad, Karachi. NUS, it has campuses in Karachi and Islamabad. So you can consider the business school for NUS, and you can apply pretty much to your SAT score to one of their business schools or their management sciences program or their social sciences program, but not their core engineering programs. I would like to discuss some of the myths that students usually have pertaining to the SAT. So one of the very common questions that we usually have is that we don't really have to study for the SAT. Please don't really try this. There is a school that I know of where it's mandatory to take the SAT, and people end up with terrible scores, 900 to 1100. I'm not going to name this school. Some of you could be from this school. So please don't do this to yourself. You have to study for this test. It's a very competitive test, and you have to study for it. So please do not really take any risk. You have to seriously put in time for this test. And if you're putting a mediocre effort, you'll only get to see a mediocre improvement. And particularly, if you're looking at that, how much effort your friends have been putting in. So your friends may be studying a lot. Your friends may not be studying a lot, but please do not really take an inspiration from anyone unless they've really done well on their SATs. Another very common question I'm usually asked is that, sir, everything is fine, everything is making sense, but I had a pretty bad grade in mathematics. So do you think this is something that I can do? This is something can I pull off? So beta, we usually have candidates who have taken a gap year after taking their medical or MD GET exam, which we need here for the medical schools in Pakistan. All their life, they want to become doctors, but for some reason, they do not end up in their desired universities, and somehow they want to switch their field. And of course, they have to take the ACT unless they want to take the university's own test if they plan on studying locally here. And when they start taking the ACT, and if they put in time and if they put in effort, so even they go on to do well, and they go on to receive exceptions and amazing score, I would say. So please notice, just because you are weak at maths or if you're not so good at maths, does not at all mean that this is something you cannot do. But please notice, you'll have to put in time at home. Regardless of your academic background, you'll have to put in time at home. I've seen people being arrogant about their past performances. So in case if you're telling me, sir, I'm on a gap year, I already had an A star in maths and A star in further maths, so I don't think this is something I cannot do. I've seen such people ending up with a score of 1300, and I've seen some of the people were pretty doubtful about themselves. They had a C, had a B in O levels or matriculation. I've seen them going past 1500 plus. So it eventually comes down to your effort, not your past performances or how good or bad you've done there in your school's beta. Also, a very common question that I keep getting is कि sir, मैंने सुना है जितना भी पढ़ लो SAT में scores improve नहीं होगा. So do you really think it's worth it कि मैं इतना time put करूँ? Summers हैं, my family's traveling. I'm ditching my traveling plans. I had a plan to visit Turkey, or I wanted to go to northern areas. So मैं फिर क्या करूँ? मैं अगर ये दूंगा तो क्या score improve होगा नहीं होगा? So again, it's a very common myth. So I'm sure by now you may have few people then in your circle who have taken the SAT and have improved considerably. So if you're putting in time and if you're doing the right effort, the score will definitely improve better. And what I do tell students over here is that if you do everything that I'm making you do here, your score will improve by 250 points. I've seen my students improving its score of 600 points as well. But Eventually, it will only be possible if you're doing the things at the right time. If you're completing the homework 2 weeks after the deadline, or if you're not sitting at home, or if you're not doing all of the homework, or if you're not doing the way I want you to do the homework, or if you're skipping one part of the homework and you're telling me, sir, maths kara tha, see, I skipped English, or I was doing English, which is why I could not do maths. So, phir nahi hoga beta. I'm just being very honest. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I'll just tell you guys how it is. Also, because this is going to be the timeline of our course. We're starting from 26th of May. We'll be pretty much getting done with everything by end of July, by including the course and the queries. I'll talk about the course and the resources in a bit as well, you know, including everything that we cover and including everything that we make you do. And the last one will solely be focusing on the full length test. So the way we usually go about the full length test is that we have a full length test, then we sit down with you guys and we discuss everything that we have, basically everything that you have a problem with in that particular exam. So we do that after every exam, every paper, so that we could see where exactly you're lacking. Is it a conceptual mistake? Are you still struggling with the concept, or you're fine with the concept but you could not really deal with the question type? So that really decides the kind of help that you need. And then we sit down with you so that we could work on that respective weakness. Since all of the weaknesses are different, sometimes it's a conceptual mistake, sometimes it's a silly mistake, sometimes, you do know the concept, but you can't do a particular question. So we discuss and then we work on all of that over here in this time period. I'll talk about this as well, beta, because it's very important that we get this right. Number one reason that I see people ending up with a bad score on the ACT is their lack of discipline. I'll cite some examples here. Okay, for example, if I ask the student that whether you've done the homework or not, so they get back to me with a reason like this. नहीं sir, वो जो दोस्त की बहन की शादी की डांस की प्रैक्टिस में गया था, वो भी 3 महीने बाद उसकी शादी है. So if you're coming back to me with the reasons like this, so I think you should take the ACT when you think you're actually ready to take the ACT. एक reason. Other reason, you're very well prepared, which I've been seeing very lately post-COVID, is the anxiety factor. I have seen some of the really good kids affecting their scores really bad because of the anxiety. Please, I guarantee you that whatever I'm going to make you do over here is going to be way hard than the actual SAT. So if you think that you can pretty much do everything that we're making you do over here, inshallah, the actual SAT is going to be a walk in the park for you. So if you can manage this stuff over here, if you can deal with this stuff over here, if you can do the questions that we're making you do over here, you can deal with that as well. But of course, our anxiety eventually decreases with a lot of practice. The only sure path that we have to work on our anxiety is a lot of practice. For example, the lot of things that I am anxious about that I'm not good at. But how do I get better at them? By doing a lot of practice. For example, there are few rides that I cannot take. I mean, if I go to an amusement park, there are rides that my cousins can take, that my family members can take. But there are some of the rides that I'm very afraid to take. But how do I get better eventually? Eventually what I'm doing is, I take a ride and I see, okay, but it wasn't as bad as initially thinking. So eventually, what you do or what we have to do here is that we have to work on our anxiety. But how do we actually work on our anxiety? By doing a lot of practice. Another thing that I see, I run into parents, or we run into parents over here at Tutor Plus. They tell us, scared. I admitted my kid over here, and they were still using the old SAT paper SAT version resources, and which affected the score of my kid. So it's very important, beta, that the resources that we are using, that we'll talk about in the next 10-15 minutes, are very relevant to the DSET. And we need to make sure that we're not using the paper version of the SAT, but the resources that were relevant in 2023 but are not relevant in 2025. So the strategy is again very important, that when exactly you have to do a certain exercise, how often you have to do the revision for it, what should be the revision mechanism, how much reading we need to do there at home, what kind of reading we need to do at home. will Reader Digest get it, or do we need to do any other kind of elevated reading? There's a lot that goes in there. Lack of perseverance. Perseverance means that all of us, all of us want things, all of us, including myself, would want certain things instantaneously. So you need to be very patient with the improvement. Your score will not bump up over time. It isn't like you're scoring 600 and the next day you'll be scoring 750. The improvement does come, but it comes very gradually. So target an improvement of 10 points in 3 days. So you don't really have to, expect any miracles of yourself over here. So मैं कल बस मेरा ऐसा कुछ shortcut बताते हैं. There are no shortcuts over here. So you need to be very patient, and you need to again have a faith in yourself. Perseverance also means that no matter how hard you've been working, you're not getting where you want to see yourself. You're not going past 780 there or 760 there. So your score is stuck. So perseverance basically means falling down and then getting back upon the saddle is what we define as perseverance. So you need to be very consistent and you need to have the faith. You will get there. Mark my words. Teachers' experience is again very relevant. So I'm sure some of you would know, we honestly didn't really pop up during the COVID time. I've been doing it for 14 years now. I have had to teach around 5,000, 6,000 kids for different tests. And when I say 5,000, 6,000 kids, I do not really have a TA. I have taught them myself. I've taught them both the components of the test, whatever test I prepare students for, be it the SAT, be it any of the other tests, be it the LUMS MB test, be it the LCAT, be it the IB test, be it the GMAT, be it the GRE. I teach both the components myself, or I don't teach. Relevant practices is again super important, but I'll talk about that in one of the next slide. Communication gaps. So what we do here is that we tell all of our students that they have to get back to us once in every 24 hours through a WhatsApp message that what exactly they've done in terms of the SAT in the past 24 hours. So it has to be a brief message, but it has to basically incorporate everything that you've been working on. And that's very mandatory over here. So it isn't like that you keep sending messages to me. I will be keeping a check on your performance as well, that how far you have come. And we've got other ways of checking the performance that you will be sure that you'll get to see in a few minutes later. The class timing that we have would be Monday to Thursday and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So you can quickly just copy this and I'll move on to the next page here. Total duration that we have for the SAT is 2 hours and 14 minutes, and there's no essay. Some of you may come across an essay option while filling out the form, but that option is only relevant for some of the states. There are some of the states in US which want their in-state students. So you're only going to be called an in-state student if you already live in US, and if you're a US national, and you're going to take your SAT over there, so you can see whether your state requires you to take the SAT or not. But in case if you're an international student, so this option is not relevant for you. Also, please notice one of the reasons why most people end up with a terrible score on the SAT is just because of this one component of the SAT, and that we call reading. So there are 3 components. I would like to break them down for you: maths, reading, and writing. I'm talking about this component. I'll talk about these 2 components in a bit. Reading is one of those sections that most people, be it here, be it in US, lose a lot of marks on. And why does that happen? Because most of us are not even used to doing academic reading, because we're usually referring to our teacher's notes. So most of the students who are taking the SAT are not even used to doing academic reading, let alone non-academic reading such as novels or magazines. Now, the SAT passages are very different. They use very elevated English. So if you read one of those passages, so the passages do not really make any sense to us because we're not so used to reading anymore. That problem has been even worsened by our habit of swiping. So we're only engaging with any content for barely 3 seconds, 4 seconds. For example, you're checking out a story and your friend is eating a burger somewhere. You're checking out the next story. You go to the next story on Instagram. This person is there in Hunza. This person has a steering wheel there on his story. This person is doing something else. This person is doing something else. So what we're doing here is that we're only trying to get engaged with this different content on my Instagram for really for 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. So my brain is not used to getting engaged with the content the way it should be. And that's why we're not really able to comprehend the passages. So even though we're reading, we're not able to comprehend what the passage is saying. So in order to improve on that, we issue you guys a lot of reading. And just by the way, that's not something that I do. College boards has told both the parents and the students that they must read or start reading at least 3 to 6 months before they take their actual SAT. They even have recommended and listed down many books as well. So I'll be issuing you guys a lot of magazines, a lot of novels as well that we have to read at home to improve our comprehension ability. Because if our comprehension ability is not improved, none of the tricks, none of the shortcuts, none of the methods that I'm going to teach you will work, because you would not be able to understand what the passage is saying. So that's super important. These are the days that will be following for our classes. So you can copy it somewhere if you have to, and then we'll proceed. Also, in addition to our books that we give you, we will be issuing you a lot of PDFs as well. So what we do is that we have an entire drive for digital SAT that we share with you guys that has everything that you're going to be needing for the SAT. In addition to that, we'll be making use of few of the other resources as well. And uh, our SAT preparation is very unconventional from the SAT preparation that you get to see here in Pakistan. I'm only talking about Pakistan. So our SAT preparation is not only limited to those, thin booklets. We do not really think that you can go past a score of 1500 plus if you are somebody who's starting off at 1300, maybe 1250, maybe 1200 with those thin booklets anymore. We don't think that Khan Academy can uh, help you as much, because there's one thing that I often say there in my classes, which is this basically means we need a very different practice to bump up our score from, let's say, 1000 to 1200. We need a different practice from 1200 to 1400. And we need different practice from 1400 to 1550. And then we need a different practice from 1550 to a perfect score. If you are scoring somewhere over here and here, what you need to do is you need to sit down with the teacher with your score reports. The teacher could see what kind of errors you've been still making, which are making you lose these 200 points. This is fine. If you're starting somewhere over here, so you can pretty much get a score of 1200 with the help of Khan Academy. But most of the content you see there on Khan Academy is very different from the content that you get to see on the actual SAT. I'm sure some of you may have done this research, or some of you may have not done this research at all, that the actual blue book questions are actually very different from the stuff that you get to see on the Khan Academy. So if you plan on targeting this score, fine, you can do, and that is the only resource that you can stick with. But if you want to go past this, it will not suffice anymore, because it's a good practice source. I am not belittling them in any way, but what I'm trying to say here is that there's a certain score improvement that you must look at when you're only relying on that on Khan Academy as one of your practice source. So what we do is, of course, we will be using Blue Book. There's no way we can practice for the SAT without it. We'll also be using one of the best resources that we have, and we call it Maths Jobs. And what we do is that we'll start off with your baseline score, with your baseline practice there, and we will be issuing you some very customized homework as well. When I say customized, what I essentially mean is that all of you would have a very different starting point as well, and would have a very different practice as well. And some of you may have, of course, different weaknesses as well. So we'll be issuing you customized homework on Maths Jobs in addition to the class homework that we're going to issue you. So let's just say I'm teaching you algebra. So I would like all of you to brush up on this particular area, and I would give you some homework from our SAT Maths book. But if I see that there's this area which still troubles you, and this is something that you're not really good at, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to keep issuing you the homework first at a score level of, let's say, 500. And once I know that you can pretty much tackle all the questions on a score level of 500, I'll be showing you the score. I'll be showing you the questions that can be tested on a score level of 500 to 600. Then I'll be showing you the question that can be tested on a scale of 600 to 700. Then I'll be testing you on this, and I'll be doing that for all of the topics. Grammar jobs has to be done the same way, except it's for grammar. So we'll be doing the same thing. Let's say I'm teaching you pronouns. So I'll first be testing you on basic concepts. So make sure that you've gotten everything that I taught you. And in case if I see that you have gone past this and you can pretty much tackle all of these questions, so I'll level up. I'll be testing you guys on the harder question, the homework, and then so on. So we keep doing it like this. IXL is another thing that I'll make use of there with you guys. So at times I'll be issuing you some skill-based practice. So if I realize that we're done discussing the entire algebra, so I'll be issuing you skill-based practice tests. For example, algebra, think of algebra as one skill. So if I think that we're done with trigonometry and we've pretty much studied everything on trigonometry, so I'll be issuing you skill-based tests on trigonometry. So this is going to do, what IXL is going to do is that IXL is still going to tell you whether still we have any kind of deficiency that we still have on trigonometry, or we're pretty much done with everything. We're going to make use of Score Smart as well for the SAT style testing as well. We'll be making use this as well, but this will make more sense once we have covered some of the topics as well, because most of these softwares or websites, we only make use of them when we have covered some portion or significant portion of the course, because otherwise you'll simply have nothing to work on over there. So once we have covered some of the topics, so then only we'll be making use of them. But these resources, what I have come to experience through my SAT batches is that these resources have been able to improve the scores by 200 to 300 points, in addition to everything that I'm going to show you there in the form of hard copy or PDF, excluding the blue book, only these resources. So there's a lot of practice that we're going to be doing. So in case if you think that you're somebody who still wants to prepare for the SAT like it's 2021 or 2022, so please notice we will not be doing it. That kind of practice does not cut it anymore and will simply be ending up with an average score of 1200, 1250. That's something that we do not really need if you want to get into one of the better universities with them. There's one important concept that I would like you guys to know, that is super scoring. So if you plan on applying to one of the universities that accept super scores, so let me explain you how super scoring works. Assuming you would take the SAT for the first time in August 2025, and let's say if you get a 720 there and a 700 in maths, your combined score would be 1420. Let's say if you appear in October 2025 again, you score 710 in English this time around, 10 fewer marks than before, but you get a 790 or 780, let's say. I'm going to make it 790, or let's just say a perfect 800 there. So what we can do here is, you can pretty much see our score here is 1510. So what I can do here is with super score, I can send my better of two scores. So I can send this one for English and this one for maths, and my super score will then be 1520. So basically, this score, you can see this is 10 points more than this score. And usually, in my assumption, in my example, the difference isn't as much, but usually when people are sending their super score, the difference is of at least 30 to 50 points. So the concept here is that you can basically send the better of your two scores. So you can send this one for English, which is from August 2025, and you can send this one for maths, which is from October 2025, and you can send the better of your two scores to the university. Now, another common question that I'm usually asked is, sir, what if I've taken the SAT multiple times? So I have to submit all of my scores to the university? तो क्या मैं ये भी submit करूँगा, ये भी submit करूँगा? Only Georgetown requires you to submit all of the scores, except that other than Georgetown, the universities would want you to submit your best score. So if you think this is your best score, send this. They're not going to know anything about this. College board will not be sending them your previous score without your consent. So they will only receive this score. They would not know that how many times you've taken the SAT. So just to wrap it up, what I discussed about the three sections, and then I'll be taking your questions on this. So writing is based on a lot of grammatical rules. I'll give you guys an overview of the paper as well, just to explain you what the paper actually looks like. So we're going to start off with the vocabulary question. We usually have the vocabulary questions there at the start. There are 6 to 8 of them in each of the module, and you're supposed to put in the correct vocabulary word there in the blank. That's one type of the question that we have. Followed by that, question number 6 over here is a function question. You can see that there are few lines which are underlined, and you have to tell that what purpose these underlined lines serve. Coming to the question number 7, the question wants you to summarize this passage, and they want you to tell the main idea or the main purpose of the text. That's another type of question that we have on the SAT. And we have the function question, where basically we have to again tell the function of the underlined lines. Then we have dual passages, and what we have to tell in this set of question is that we're supposed to tell that what exactly the author of text 1 thinks of the text given in the text 2 there, or vice versa. I'm just giving a brief overview because I have to be quick. There are multiple types. Then we have another main idea question, which is question number 10. Then we have what we call evidence based question. So this is what we call command of evidence, where we have been given some data and we have been given some textual details as well. We have to them in synchronization, and then we have to see what exactly they're looking for. So we have to make use of the data, and then we have to answer the question there. In question number 12, they have given us an assignment, and then it says which response from a survey given to shoppers who made a purchase at a retail store best supports the researcher's explanation. So you would see, or you would come across a question where you would see a researchers or a team of researchers has come up with a hypothesis or an explanation, and we have to tell that from which of the following options from A, B, C, D actually supports or at times weakens the researcher's explanation. That's another type of the question that we have. So question number 13 is similar to what we just discussed. So it says, what's the statement about the exhibition? If true, would most directly support the underlying claim? So a claim has been made, and we have to tell that which of these options from A, B, C, D actually supports or weakens the claim. Then we have another command of evidence question that we talked about. So we have to look at the bar graph, we have to look at this text, and then we have to answer what they're asking for. So 15 is same as 14, and 16 is same as question number 13 that we discussed. We have to tell that which of these points basically either strengthens or weakens the researcher's hypothesis there. Then we have the most notorious part. Some students do not really like this type of question. This is what we call logical completion. So you see a text over there. We're supposed to see that which of these options from A, B, C, D would actually logically complete the text. Since the answers options are pretty close, and at times you would think that maybe there are two answers or maybe three answers which are fitting in. So which is why most people go on to dislike this topic, but eventually there are skills that you have to develop in order to get better at this particular topic. Followed by that, we have the writing section. This was all about the reading. Then now we have the writing section. So as you can see, the first two questions, 19 and 21, not 20, 19 and 21 are based on pure grammar. They want you to put the correct verb there. Then we have questions related to punctuation. So the testing is on semicolon, comma, then colon, and we're supposed to put in the relevant option there. And for that, of course, we're supposed to know the grammatical rules. 22 wants us to put the correct version of the sentence grammatically. That's another sentence. Thank you, Fatma. 23 is again similar to what we just saw over here. They want us to choose the correct verb there. 24 is again similar. They want us to put the correct version of the sentence and using the punctuation. So if you could see, the answers options are only different. B has a comma, C has a full stop, D does not have a punctuation. 25 is again testing us on the same thing. We have to see whether there should be a pause. There must not be a pause. If there is a pause, so would there be a comma? Would there be a colon? There are different grammatical rules over there that we have to learn. 26 and a few of the next questions that you will see are what we call transition questions. These are literally the easiest questions on the English portion of the SAT. You're supposed to put in the relevant word over there based on how the two sentences are connected. So whether it would be previously, regardless, there, instead, you have to see what the context is, and then you have to choose the correct word there from the options. 27, 28, 29 are all transition-based questions. The next group that we have here, even 30th is a transition question. 31 is what we call radical analysis. So you would see 4 bullet points over there, and in all of these questions, you would notice one common thing, that there's a certain student and he wants to achieve a certain goal. That's it. And we won't really be reading the rest of the part because it's literally the same in each of these questions. So the assignment here is that he wants to emphasize the Janaki Amal's achievements there. So we have to look at the relevant notes over there, and then we have to tell that which of these notes we can actually make use of to achieve what he wants to achieve. And then we'll have another 2 of these questions, and that's all for the English section. This is the paper version of the SAT, which is why you're seeing more questions than the actual digital version of the SAT. Digital version only has 27 questions. This one had 33 questions. So this is a sample paper. The actual SAT that you're going to take would have only 27 questions in each of the module. This has 33 questions. I'll move forward to maths. So some of the very first question in the maths would be really silly. So if you look at question number one, it's really easy and really silly in the sense that it's a very basic concepts you will not really get to see, but not all of the questions are going to be easy. Question number two is related to lines, and we have one related to probability. Then we have question number four related to the type of the function, whether it's increasing linear, decreasing linear, increasing exponential, and so on. Then we have another question related to function. We're supposed to tell the y-intercept. Then we have another basic algebra system of equation question. Then we have a percentages question. Then we have an algebraic expression. We're supposed to simplify it. Then we have a basic ratio question related to the line segments. Then we have some other questions from coordinate geometry. Then we have 11 from another topic or called linear function. Then we have basic algebra as well. Then we have basic proportion. Question number 13 is related to proportion. Then we have basic geometry. There's a question on rectangles. Then we have a question from statistic. Then we have a question from solids. Then we have a question related to the solutions. Then we have another question from coordinate geometry. Then we have another question that we call linear function. Then we have another question from indices and surds. Then we have another question from coordinate geometry. So again, one other question from algebra. Then we have one question from right angle. Then we have another function question, another function question. Then we have another coordinate geometry question. So as by now you may have seen that there's no permutation there at all on the SAT. Then we have a scatter plot question. Then we have another system of equation question, and that's it. So not all of the questions that would be this easy. You could expect to see some of the really difficult questions that we will specifically be focusing on. I'll show you some of the questions from the maths, because what usually people assume when I make them look at one of the pilot papers, so they assume that all of the maths is going to be, this easy. So this is also one of the SAT questions. You can have a quick look at this. This is also one of the SAT questions. So it isn't like you're going to study a topic that you may have never covered. I'm sure all of you may have studied one, or maybe there may be a topic, maybe there could be maybe 6, 7, 8 topics that you may have never studied in your school, particularly if you didn't have maths and AS, or if you're just starting off your AS, and if you do not plan on taking maths, or if you do not plan on having maths in your school. But most of the stuff that we're going to cover over here in our class has already been taught to you in your schools. It's just that the way these questions are tested is just very different. And considering we only have 66 seconds for one English questions, 91 questions, 91 seconds for one math question. So we have to really speed up our working through the SAT, and that's something that we have to work on. But I'll be taking your questions over here. This is all that I had to say. So I'll start off from the very basic. Okay, I don't see any questions here. Whoever has joined from the Cedar email, in case if you have any questions, you can ask me. But even Imran, if you have any questions, please to ask. Uzair, if you have any questions, please to ask. Iman, Fatma, beta, if you have any question. Hassan, beta, Hurera, Hosanna, if you have any question, please to ask. Yatasa, Malia, Arfin, if you have any question. Raja, Arfin, please to ask. Rava, beta, if you have any questions, please to ask. Sidra, if you have any questions, please to ask. Siraj, Soha, beta, Yusra, beta, if you have any questions, please to ask. जी Siraj, you'll get the recording for this. I am assuming this is being recorded, so ये आपको मिल जाएगी.
Assalamualaikum, sir. This is me, Cadet Uzair.
जी बेटा.
Hello. Assalamualaikum, sir. This is Cadet Uzair. I just want to ask one question from you. Like session के start में मैं नहीं था, and I don't know आपने क्या क्या चीजें बताई at that time. बट पार्टिकुलरली हम जो मिलिट्री बैकग्राउंड से ताल्लुक़ रखते हैं, लाइक वी इन द मिलिट्री इंस्टीट्यूशन, तो हमारे पास वो LORs या फिर CLRs जो होते हैं वो किस तरह उनका प्रोसेस हमने करना होता है? लेटर ऑफ रिकमेंडेशन हमने किधर से लेने होते हैं? टीचर से लेने होते हैं या फिर किसी स्पेसिफिक मिलिट्री पर्सन से लेने होते हैं?
किस हवाले से बेटा? दिस इज अबाउट द एसीटी, सो हाउ इज मिलिट्री रेलेवेंट टू द एसीटी? आई एम नॉट श्योर. मतलब अगर आप एसईटी की कॉन्टेक्स्ट से पूछ रहे हैं, तो I'm not really sure कि how SAT would be relevant to military. So you're already there in military, so I don't think you need to take the SAT. So you need to see whether you want to continue with the military or you do not, or you wish to go to a university. You wish to go to a university, so the military does not have anything to do with the SAT. It's a very different thing. So you have to, whichever city you're in, so you have to sign up there. SAT is conducted in almost all of the major cities. तो आपको एक independently उसके लिए register होना पड़ता है. उसके लिए I don't think any school will help you, though your school can register you for the ACT, but I'm not really sure कि आप जिस जगह पे हैं वहाँ पे how exactly it works.
All right.
Heather, bit of the classes start from today. Technically, it was the first class, orientation class. The lecture will start from tomorrow, as in the first maths class will be tomorrow, first English class will be day after tomorrow. So that's how we plan on starting, because the earlier we start, the better it is. तो ये एक चीज़ है बेटा, एंड ऑफ कोर्स इसमें बीच में एक बकरीद भी आएगी, तो उसका तो ऑफ होगा. मुझे नहीं पता कि हमारे देश में बकरीद है नहीं है, अगर है तो फिर उस दिन क्लास नहीं होगी ऑफ कोर्स. So yeah, because we need any good SAT preparation would actually require you to put in 3 months. लोग समझते हैं कि एक मंथ में भी हो जाएगा. वी हैव दिस रॉन्ग assumption here in पाकिस्तान के जब SAT की बिल्कुल लम्स की डेडलाइन आ जाती है, इन केस for those of, I mean, particularly for those students who plan on applying to LUMS, तो हम तब SAT देते हैं. फिर when they take it for the very first time, they end up with a score of 1200, और फिर वो लंच के लिए काफ़ी नहीं होता. So the earlier you start, the better this is, considering you get multiple attempts to improve your scores then. क्योंकि लोगों को at times लगता है कि एक ही अटेम्प्ट में आ जाता है स्कोर, जो कि आ जाता है मोस्ट लोगों का, लेकिन कुछ कुछ लोगों का नहीं आता. अब इस बीच में अगर कोई इंसान ट्रैवल करने लग जाता है या कहीं और चले जाता है, सो दे देयर स्कोर ऑफ कोर्स डज सफर. तो ये थोड़ी सी एक चीज़ है जो कि आपको दिमाग में रखनी है कि द अर्लियर यू स्टार्ट, द सेफर यू आर. बेटा ये टेस्ट मोस्ट प्रॉब्ली हम वेंसडे को लेंगे या थर्सडे को लेंगे, जिसको हम कहते हैं आपका बेस लाइन स्कोर. Yusra beta, do you have a question? Soha beta, do you have a question? Siraj, Sidra, Rava beta, do you have a question? Malia beta, Raja, I think, do you have a question? Etc. But these are the dates for this year. तो ये August की डेट है. Then we have, followed by that we have date for September, which is again almost 3 weeks after the August test. And then we have the October one, November one, December one. जी बेटा, यू कैन आस्क प्राइवेटली, नो इशू. तो मैं आपका नाम बगैर लिए बता देता हूँ. तो द वे वी गो अबाउट दिस इज के I'll be sitting down with you to discuss which universities you're considering, both here in Pakistan, in case if you're considering any universities in Pakistan, and if you're not considering any of the universities in Pakistan, so will be again, the process is the same. We need to sit down. अब क्योंकि ये एसईटी है, अब इसमें आपकी क्लास में दोनों किस्म के बच्चे होते हैं, द वंस हु आर बेसिकली अप्लाइंग लोकली एंड द वंस हु आर नॉट अप्लाइंग लोकली. एंड यूजुअली आई एम अस्यूमिंग कि आपकी क्लास में ज़्यादा बच्चे वो होंगे द वंस हु वांट टू अप्लाई अब्रॉड, बिकॉज यूजुअली अगस्त के टाइम में वो बच्चे होते हैं द वंस हु वांट टू अप्लाई अब्रॉड. But regardless of that, people take the SAT both for the local universities and international universities. So the process is the same, that we need to sit down. क्योंकि अब लम्स और आईबी भी इक्वली कॉम्पिटिटिव होता जा रहा है, इनफैक्ट हो ही गया है. तो द प्रोसेस इज द सेम, एवरीथिंग इज द सेम इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट के हम आपके साथ एक डायग्नोस्टिक के बाद जब एक बेसलाइन स्कोर होता है, तो फिर हम वहाँ से डिसाइड करते हैं. होता ये है कि आई हैव सीन पीपल हु टेल मी कि सर मुझे हार्वर्ड जाना है. हम कहते हैं बिल्कुल, आप बिल्कुल जा सकते हैं, मतलब हम तो आपको नहीं रोक रहे. बट वंस वी हैव देयर बेसलाइन स्कोर, तो वो 800 होता है. फिर उसके बाद में उनको टर्की भी जाना है, उस पीरियड में उनको फिर टर्की से आके नॉर्दर्न एरियाज भी जाना है, तो फिर अगर ऐसे प्रिपरेशन करते हैं तो फिर वो स्कोर वो वाला नहीं आता। फिर बच्चे कहते हैं देखें तो मैं एक और अटैम्प्ट दे देता हूँ, इवन दो दे डू नो कि उन्होंने पढ़ा नहीं है, लेकिन फिर वो इस तरीके से फिर आपका टाइम बहुत चला जाता है। अगस्त इज द बेस्ट टाइम बिकॉज स्कूल्स लिटरली अभी हमारे पास जो हैं, कुछ स्कूल फिफ्थ, कुछ स्कूल 10, कुछ 14 तक नहीं खुलते हैं, एंड जब खुलते भी हैं तो दे वी डोंट हैव अ लॉट ऑफ वर्कलोड। तो आपने जो पूछा कि अगस्त इज द बेस्ट टाइम, तो अगस्त इसलिए बेस्ट टाइम होता है बिकॉज वंस द स्कूल्स रीओपन, तो अक्टूबर वाली टाइम भी चले आप ये कह सकते हैं कि इतना लोड नहीं होता। लेकिन जब नवंबर और दिसंबर में जब हमारे पास मिड टर्म होते हैं, गॉड फॉरबिड अगर इन A2 और अगर आपका किसी, क्योंकि ऑफन हमने देखा है ओवर द इयर्स के बच्चों के अगर उनको रीटेक्स देने पड़ जाते हैं इन अक्टूबर नवंबर, तो फिर वो जगल कर रहे होते हैं कि हम सर स्कूल को देखें या AS को देखें, क्योंकि मैं तो A2 स्टार्ट भी हो गई और मेरा AS का भी रीटेक और फिर मैं SAT को बीच में कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाता है, क्योंकि फिर वो ऐसे। जब सॉरी आई थिंक मेरा बीच में डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया था, मैं एक आंसर दे रहा था बच्चे का। तो मैं बोल ये रहा था कि आपके ऊपर है इवेंचुअली, लेकिन मैं ये कह रहा था कि व्हेन यू टेक दी एसईटी इन अगस्त तो आपके पास स्कूल का प्रेशर नहीं होता है, क्योंकि जब वंस स्कूल्स रीओपन तो फिर आप जगल कर रहे होते हैं। फिर मैंने ये कहा था कि अगर आपके रीटेक्स आ जाता है गॉड फॉरबिड, क्योंकि ऐसे मैंने देखा है, अल्लाह ना करे कि आप में से किसी को रीटेक देना पड़ता है, लेकिन फिर उसमें प्रॉब्लम ये होता है कि वंस यू हैव द रीटेक्स तो उसमें आप देख रहे होते हैं कि मैं एस को पढ़ूँ, A2 को पढ़ूँ, या मैं एसईटी के लिए पढ़ूँ, और फिर वो एसईटी जो है बीच में कॉम्प्रोमाइज हो जाता है। और फिर हम कहते हैं कि यार अच्छा मैं नेक्स्ट टाइम को देख लेता हूँ या मैं दिसंबर को देख लेता हूँ। दिसंबर नवंबर में भी आप अपने रीटेक से फ्री होते हैं, तो फिर यहाँ पे एसईटी खड़ा होता है और एक मंथ में एसईटी की प्रिपरेशन हो नहीं सकती। तो ये एक चीज़ है बेटा। और फिर जो आप जो नेक्स्ट बंदे ने पूछा बेटा, मैं आपको बता देता हूँ कि यू कैन टेक इट एज मेनी टाइम एज यू वांट, देयर इज नो रिस्ट्रिक्शन। आल्सो प्लीज नोटिस, इसमें एक और भी चीज़ है कि जो वैलिडिटी है वो 5 years की है। तो though some universities want you to submit your scores which for the ACT that have been taken on in the last 2 years, इस तरह कुछ यूनिवर्सिटीज रिक्वायरमेंट जो है वो प्लेस करती हैं, वो ये कहती हैं कि नहीं आपने एकेडमिकली बहुत सारी चीज़ें आपकी अचीव ज़्यादा आपने कर लिए होंगे तो आप अपने रीसेंट स्कोर सबमिट करें, बट बाय रीसेंट आई मीन द एसटीज दैट यू हैव टेकन इन द लास्ट 2 years। तो अगर आप अपने एस में स्कोर एसटी दे रहे हैं तो ये रेलेवेंट होगा और ये वैलिड होगा पूरी दुनिया में अगले 2 साल तक। बिकॉज अगर आप अगस्त में दे रहे हैं तो आप नेक्स्ट ईयर अगस्त में या अक्टूबर में 2026 से बीच में या नवंबर 2026 तक आप अप्लाई कर रहे होंगे यूनिवर्सिटी, तो आपके एसटी स्कोर को टेक्निकली 1 year हुआ होगा। So you can pretty much apply, take the SAT in AS and then apply next year. So that works for you. There's no harm. A lot many people do this. अब सिर्फ SAT नहीं होता, डिपेंड करता है कि आपने कहाँ पे जाना है। हमारे पास एक और भी एग्जाम होते हैं जिसको हम कहते हैं एडवांस प्लेसमेंट और AP। और AP खाली मई में होते हैं और वो बिल्कुल A लेवल्स के साथ ओवरलैप करके दे रहे होते हैं। अब आई हैव अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह बैचेस इन UAE एंड US एज वेल। तो वहाँ पे बच्चे के वो फिर बहुत ज़्यादा बच्चे AP एग्जाम्स दे रहे होते हैं, एडवांस प्लेसमेंट्स दे रहे होते हैं। तो स्मार्ट अप्रोच तो यही होती है, क्योंकि वहाँ पे कुछ बच्चे और थोड़ा सा जल्दी दे देते हैं, तो वो इवन पहले P सेट देते हैं ग्रेड 9 में, फिर वो ग्रेड 10 में ही जो है अपने वो SAT दे देते हैं। बहुत कम बच्चे अगर डिले करते हैं तो ग्रेड 11 में दे देते हैं। हमारे पास एक कल्चर है कि हमने बिल्कुल सर पे आ जाएगा SAT, बिल्कुल डेडलाइन आ जाएगी यूनिवर्सिटी की, तब देंगे हम SAT। वो फिर क्या कह सकते हैं, उसमें कुछ नहीं कह सकते। थोड़ा सा लैक ऑफ काउंसलिंग भी और लैक ऑफ एजुकेशन भी है। बट अगेन द सूनर यू टेक इट द बेटर इट इज, बिकॉज यू हैव मोर थिंग्स टू टेक केयर ऑफ ना। आप यूनिवर्सिटीज अब कहती हैं, इवन लोकली यूनिवर्सिटीज इस तरह कहती हैं कि आप ए लेवल्स के टाइम के बाद या अभी तक आपने कोई कोई और सर्टिफिकेशन क्यों नहीं करी, या आप कोई ऑनलाइन इंटर्नशिप कर लेते, बेशक 2 घंटे की कर लेते। तो देयर मेनी अदर एस्पेक्ट्स ऑफ द प्रोफाइल दैट वी हैव टू वर्क ऑन। तो खाली एसटीडी एक चीज़ नहीं है कि हमारे पास फॉर एवर हम कर लेंगे। एंड व्हाट पीपल डू इज कि लोग थोड़ा सा ये कहते हैं यार आसान वाली चीज़ पहले कर लेते हैं, इंटर्नशिप कर लेते हैं, थोड़ा सा चिल सीन हो जाएगा और सारी चीज़ें, तो सबसे मुश्किल चीज़ है उसको सबसे एंड के लिए रख देते हैं। और फिर वही बात है कि बस अब यूनिवर्सिटी की डेडलाइन आ गई, अब एसटीडी दे देते हैं। लेकिन फिर वो सारी चीज़ें आपकी जीरो ही हो जाती हैं, क्योंकि वो इंटर्नशिप किसी काम की नहीं है इफ़ यू डोंट हैव अ सपोर्टिंग एसटीडी स्कोर। जी बेटा, आप अप्लाई कर सकते हैं। मैंने आपको बताया कि यूनिवर्सिटीज की कोई रिस्ट्रिक्शन नहीं है। देयर इज नो रिक्वायरमेंट दैट यू हैव टू सबमिट ऑल ऑफ योर एसएटी स्कोर्स। यू कैन सबमिट विद योर रीसेंट एसएटी स्कोर्स। कॉलेज बोर्ड, देखिए देयर आर टू वेज टू सेंड योर स्कोर्स टू द यूनिवर्सिटी। एक तो नॉर्मल वे है कि आप कॉलेज बोर्ड के थ्रू सेंड करते हैं, और यू कैन सेंड योर स्कोर्स अप टू 4 यूनिवर्सिटीज थ्रू कॉलेज बोर्ड। हर यूनिवर्सिटी का एक कोड होता है, तो आप यूनिवर्सिटी के कोड पे भेज सकते हैं विदाउट एनी चार्जेस अप टू 4 यूनिवर्सिटीज। और इसके लिए एक सर्टेन टाइम लिमिट होती है, उसके बाद आप करेंगे तो फिर पैसे लगते हैं। एंड यू कैन सेंड द स्कोर्स दैट यू वांट। ऐसा नहीं है कॉलेज बोर्ड अपनी मर्जी से आपकी आपकी बिहाफ पे यूनिवर्सिटी से अप्लाई करेगा। कॉलेज बोर्ड का काम एसएटी है। कॉलेज बोर्ड the platform for that, the college board platform is actually not used to apply to the universities, it's only used to take the SAT। तो ये आप दो चीज़ें अलग अलग हैं, तो इन दोनों को कंफ्यूज मत करें। तो यू वॉन्ट हैव टू अप्लाई थ्रू कॉलेज बोर्ड। आपके स्कोर्स आपकी कंसेंट के बगैर नहीं दे सकते, और ये कोई पाकिस्तान की बॉडी थोड़ी है कि वो जिसको दिल चाहे आपके स्कोर्स दे देंगे, आपसे पूछेंगे भी नहीं, ऐसा नहीं होता है। आपकी कंसेंट होगी तो फिर वो आपसे पूछते हैं, और फिर तो आप खुद अप्लाई करेंगे। वो आपकी स्कोर्स कहीं पे भी किसी भी यूनिवर्सिटी को नहीं भेजेंगे। और खाली स्कोर नहीं जाते, आपकी ओवरऑल प्रोफाइल जाती है यू सेट। और फिर आप बेसिकली कोड होता है यूनिवर्सिटी का, तो आप उस कोड पे सेंड करते हैं, फिर उनको वो एक्नॉलेज करते हैं जी हमारे आपको ये स्कोर्स रिसीव हो गए, आपके यही स्कोर्स हैं, आपका यही नाम है। तो देयर इज एन एंटायर प्रोसेस। तो ऐसा नहीं होता कि आपके स्कोर्स कहीं पे भी चले जाएंगे या मिसयूज हो जाएंगे, या आपका खराब स्कोर है कोई, नेक्स्ट अटेम्प्ट में आपका स्कोर अच्छा है तो वो आपका बुरा वाला स्कोर उनके पास चला जाएगा। इट डज नॉट वर्क दैट वे एट ऑल। ये बहुत फूल प्रूफ सिस्टम है। एससीटी ये कॉलेज बोर्ड की हिस्ट्री पाकिस्तान की हिस्ट्री से ज़्यादा पहले की है। पाकिस्तान 1947 में आया, एससीटी जो है उससे भी पहले का है, तो आपको ऐसे परेशान होने की जरूरत नहीं। सीट्स बेटा, देखिए प्रॉब्लम सीट्स का थोड़ा सा यहाँ पे ये है कि इफ यू आर टेकिंग द एसटी इन कराची और इस्लामाबाद एंड लाहौर, तीनों सिटीज का थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम ये है कि यहाँ पे डेडलाइन ये इट डज नॉट एट ऑल वर्क लाइक द वे इट वर्क्स देयर फॉर ए लेवल्स। ए लेवल्स में आपको सीट मिल जानी है और कोई मसला नहीं होगा। हमारे पास मसला ही थोड़ा सा ये है कि एप्लीकेंट्स थोड़े से ज़्यादा हैं और टेस्ट सेंटर्स कम हैं। पर्टिकुलरली दिस प्रॉब्लम इज़ वेरी कॉमन इन कराची। लाहौर इस्लामाबाद में भी हो जाती है, इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं होती है, लेकिन कुछ कुछ अटेम्प्ट्स में अच्छा सारे सेंटर्स हर टेस्ट जो है हर हर अटेम्प्ट को ऑफर नहीं करते, तो यू नीड टू रजिस्टर एसएप। ऐसा नहीं होता कि रजिस्ट्रेशन की डेडलाइन भी है तो मेरी मर्जी में अप्लाई कर दूंगा, दे विल एडजस्ट। पहले आपको देखना है कि सीट अवेलेबल है भी या नहीं है। तो सीट अगर अवेलेबल होगी तो आपको एडमिशन मिलेगा। And there are so many times when people have to fly to different countries, and I've seen people fly to different countries as well just to take the SAT, क्योंकि सीट ही नहीं मिल रही होती, तो सीट्स खत्म हो जाती हैं कॉलेज बोर्ड की एसएटी की। तो ये आपको थोड़ा सा पहले देखना होगा और आपको एसएप अप्लाई कर दें। रजिस्ट्रेशंस आर ओपन फॉर ऑल द अटेम्प्ट्स। मैं कॉलेज बोर्ड की रजिस्ट्रेशन की बात कर रहा हूँ, जस्ट टू बी क्लियर। तो यू हैव टू अप्लाई एसएप, तो वो आपको अप्लाई करना पड़ेगा। हाँ, इफ यू नॉट रेडी फॉर अ पर्टिकुलर एग्जाम, आपने अप्लाई कर दिया लेकिन आपको लग रहा है मेरी तो प्रिपरेशन हुई नहीं, तो यू कैन मूव द डेट, आप डेट को आगे पुश कर सकते हैं, लेकिन अप्लाई एसएप। राजा अरफीन बेटा, दोनों चीजें बच्चे करते हैं। देयर सम स्टूडेंट्स हु चूज टू वेट फॉर देयर स्कोर्स, और वो कहते हैं नहीं मेरे स्कोर्स आ जाएंगे तो मैं खुद भेजूंगा, बेशक मेरे पैसे लग जाएं थोड़े से, लेकिन मैं खुद भेजूंगा वंस आई सी वंस आई सी व्हाट माय स्कोर्स आर। कुछ बच्चों को जल्दी होती है, वो कहते हैं स्कोर्स आए ना आए मैं पहले ही भेज देता हूँ, तो जो भी स्कोर्स आएंगे वो यूनिवर्सिटी खुद रिसीव कर लेगी। तो दोनों चीजें सही हैं, डिपेंड करते हैं कि आपकी प्रिपरेशन कैसी है। इफ यू आर वेरी कॉन्फिडेंट गेटिंग अ वेरी गुड स्कोर, तो आप पहले भी भेज सकते हैं, कॉलेज बोर्ड के थ्रू भी भेज सकते हैं। एंड इफ यू थिंक नहीं मैं थोड़ा सा वेट कर लेता हूँ, मैं देख लेता हूँ क्या स्कोर आ रहा है, बेशक डेडलाइन जो है वो पास हो जाए, नॉट द यूनिवर्सिटी की डेडलाइन, कॉलेज बोर्ड के स्कोर सेंड करने की डेडलाइन, तो यू कैन सेंड द स्कोर पर्सनली एज वेल। स्टूडेंट्स टेंड टू डू बोथ द थिंग्स, दोनों में कोई हार्म नहीं है, दोनों के अपने प्रॉस एंड कॉन्स हैं। जी नहीं बेटा, खाली टेस्ट डे के लिए यू ओनली नीड ब्लू बुक ऐप, यू नीड अ लैपटॉप, अ वर्किंग लैपटॉप, अ वन दैट यू यूज पर्सनली। राजा अरफीन, आपका क्वेश्चन आंसर हो गया? The one that you use personally, of course, and a charger. In the context of Pakistan, मैं एक पॉकेट इंटरनेट डिवाइस भी सजेस्ट करता हूँ। यहाँ पे ऐसा हो चुका है कि एक टेस्ट सेंटर में इंटरनेट बंद हो गया था। That only happened once, and the students were compensated with a different test date. Like, that's very demotivating considering you're taking an exam and the internet is not working. So what I suggest is to keep a pocket internet as well, a Wi-Fi device, a pocket Wi-Fi device. You can, if you can. Again, it's a very rare scenario, but again, it's Pakistan, so internet can stop anytime. So ये ऐसा हुआ है एक मर्तबा. So which is what I suggest is okay, laptop, charger, a pocket Wi-Fi device. That's it. And of course, you will be needing your admission ticket and your passport. वो थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है। अगर पासपोर्ट एक्सपायर्ड है तो गेट इट मेड बेटा, इसका और कोई हल नहीं है। स्लिप विल नॉट वर्क, सो यू नीड टू गेट इट मेड। अब जल्दी बन जाते हैं, टाइम पे बन जाते हैं, दे हैव अरेंज मोर प्रिंटर्स, क्योंकि प्रिंटर का ही इशू था, तो यू कैन गेट वन मेड। तो ये एडवाइजेबल है, इस पर रिस्क मत लीजिएगा। देर आर वेरी फ्यू सेंटर्स in Lahore and Karachi which are new, which did allow students without a passport, and the centers can be punished or banned by the college board, क्योंकि ये बहुत strict check है। A lot many of my students, at least 15 to 20 of my students throughout my teaching career, had to skip their SAT or had to not, or eventually could not take their SAT just because they didn't have their passport with them. So you need to make sure that you're carrying your passport with yourself. Passport nahi hai, so you have plenty of time to get it made. So usko please बनवा लें. There is a charging port, beta. There is a charging port, so you can charge your laptop if the battery dies before your paper is finished. And if it dies, so the paper will start from where it stopped. तो ये ऐसा मसला नहीं है, ठीक है? तो you need to make sure the app does not crash. ऐसा कोई issue नहीं होता है. No such issues have been reported. College board, of course, does pay a lot of attention to each of these things. So ऐसी चीज नहीं है कि वो कोई app crash हो जाएगी या something like that. But if it does, let's just say because of power failure or your laptop died, so your test will start from where it ended. GBT, you can send up to 4 free score reports, but you have to pick the colleges for that ना. तो आप इस तरह कर सकते हैं, लेकिन स्कोर की डेडलाइन होती है उसमें. If you completely mess up, देखिए पता नहीं ऐसा क्यों हुआ कि you completely mess up. आप बहुत डाउट कर रहे हैं अपने आप को बेटा, लेकिन जी ठीक है, colleges will not see it unless you want them to see it. मतलब if you get a very bad score तो कोई मसला नहीं है. मतलब the colleges will not see it. Please, college board is not a college. Please इसको confuse मत करें. It's a body that takes the SAT throughout the world. And no college will get to see your score unless you really know university. Actually, university and college are very interchangeable terms that we use. So no university will ever get to see your scores unless you really want them to see your scores. Please इस चीज को confuse मत करें. There is one optional break, beta. There is a 10 minutes break. It's not optional, actually वो mandatory होता है because आपके स्क्रीन पे आपका टाइमर चल रहा होता है, लेकिन हम उसको इसलिए ऑप्शनल कहते हैं कि बस वो एक ऑप्शनल सी एक चीज़ है. बट मोस्ट स्टूडेंट्स आई डू रिकमेंड कि आप वो लें ब्रेक, और वो 2 सेक्शंस के बाद आपको मिलेगा. इससे 10 मिनट्स ब्रेक. जस्ट गो आउट, गेट सम फ्रेश एयर. बाद में आप आ जाएं, हैव समथिंग इफ यू वांट टू हैव समथिंग, कोई चॉकलेट रख लें आपके पास, बिस्किट रख लें. दैट्स इट. इट्स अ 10 मिनट्स ब्रेक. Is the real SAT exactly like the blue book? It's harder than the blue book papers. ठीक है, तो अभी हुआ ये है कि first they release 4 papers and they release another 5th and 6th paper. ठीक है, फिर they release another 3 papers and they basically removed paper number 1, 2 and 3 just because they had a lot of complaints from the students के जो actual SAT है वो harder है, और जो blue book के sample papers थे वो थोड़े से easier हैं. तो they have introduced, or they have basically relaunched 4 more papers 7, 8, 9 and 10. तो ये है, but those have some good questions as well, मतलब जो कि hard हैं. But again, आप ऐसा नहीं कर सकते. ऐसा नहीं हुआ कि बिल्कुल वही वाले क्वेश्चंस आ जाएंगे. तो कॉन्सेप्ट्स वो होते हैं, लेकिन कोई ऐसा नहीं होता कि सिद्रा की जगह सोहा लिख देंगे, सोहा की जगह सिद्रा लिख देंगे, और बस इतना ही डिफरेंस होगा. एक प्रॉपर टेस्ट है ये. आप जब करोगे प्रैक्टिस तो आपको थोड़ी सी ये बात और बेहतर समझ में आएगी. बट क्रोम बुक के ऊपर आई डोंट थिंक यू कैन टेक इट. क्रोम बुक के ऊपर आई डोंट थिंक यू कैन डाउनलोड a blue book app. I think it has to be a Windows operating system laptop or a Mac OS, either of the two. Chromebook, you can try Chromebook. I don't think a Chromebook would work. I think they've only 2 options, like Windows or Mac OS है. तीसरा ऑप्शन आता नहीं है वहाँ पे, because I don't download it for my laptop as well, so I don't think a Chromebook को accept करते हैं. And नहीं, colleges will not automatically take बेटा your highest score. आपको separately send करने हैं, खुद से separately send करने हैं super score. और वो ऐसा नहीं होता कि खुद से वो कुछ नहीं करेंगे कॉलेज बोर्ड, ऐसा नहीं होता. But these are all the questions. So we'll have our maths class tomorrow, and we'll have our test day after tomorrow. So a proper full skill test hoga. So I'll be letting you guys know how to take that test. So abhi ke liye to beta, I think I have answered all the questions. Let me scroll up once again in case if I miss any question. And in case if I miss your questions, you can reach us out there in the WhatsApp group as well. तो आप वहाँ पे message कर सकते हैं. Otherwise, I've made sure to answer all the questions that you guys sent personally or there on the group written. Thank you, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Please take care. Allah Hafiz.